Hey, this is Brandon McManus, Denver Broncos Super Bowl champion, and you're listening to The Scoop on alscoop.com.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to The Scoop, alscoop.com's podcast. This is Season 6, Episode 20. I'm John DeCarlo, joined by Kyle Gauss, Sam Cohn, and Sam Neumann. Kyle gets top going again.
I went first.
I knew that was coming.
The lineup got stagnant. We had to move our high on-base percentage guy to lead off. It's like when the Braves moved Acuna from cleanup to lead off. You just got to put your best players in the position to make plays.
So Sam's hitting out of the 3-hole, so that's not bad either. Hits for power. Sam Cohn is a 2-hitter.
A little slap hitter, I get it.
I'll get on base.
What's your walk-up? I mean, do we discuss walk-up music at this point before we start talking Temple hoops and Temple football?
Put me on the spot like that.
Mine is
Yeah.
Genuine's Pony.
What a great choice. Do either of the Sams know that song?
No.
I mean, that's more like my era.
Oh yeah, that's definitely not my era. That's
Is that why you said it?
But a little Genuine Pony story. A couple years ago, my old office used to have like 40 people in one office, and people wouldn't hear if the administrative assistant wasn't at the front desk and somebody was knocking, it was locked, nobody would hear it. So they got this little doorbell, and I kept making the joke that I was going to program it so that it played Genuine's Pony every time somebody played it instead of the ringing. And then finally, like a woman told me, I Googled that, and that's really not a work appropriate song. I was like, I'm gonna walk away. Just some like 65-year-old, 7-year-old woman Googling Genuine misspelled Pony.
What a start we're off to this week.
Yeah, it's a good song.
That's your walk-up song. Sam, what do you got?
Probably I Am a God by Kanye West.
Jesus.
Okay.
Intimidation factor.
Don't know how I follow that up. I guess probably something Oasis, obviously. I'm not very broad with that. So
I mean, do you go like a single? Do you go like a non-single B-side type
Play an
of thing?
entire album? Like
we'll do
How long is it taking them to get to the plate?
talk really
I mean, do you just go
slowly.
Wonderwall? No.
No, that's way too mainstream. You got to just bear crawl to home plate, so you take your time.
It's good stuff. Good stuff.
John, what's yours?
John, what's your walk-up music going to be when we put you in like an 11-1 game?
That was the cleanup hitter.
No,
It's not.
no.
I'll call it 7th.
Remember in Major League 2 where they need Dorn to get on base? That's you.
Yeah, so he takes a
This guy used to pitch you inside, right?
takes HBP. Yeah.
And then he refuses to get pinch ran for.
Yeah. He's like, oh, I'm good. Let me think. I don't know. Maybe what about Night Fever by the Bee Gees? Mix it up a little bit. Get a little disco in there. Sam Cohn giving us his generic Saturday Night Fever dance. Now maybe I'll come up with something. I mean, I love Cashmere, but that's Chase's song.
Baseball, not exactly like a great mix.
What's that?
Aren't the Bee Gees and baseball not exactly a great mix?
Well, yeah, because that DJ from Chicago organized that Disco Sucks party back in the 70s, and it turned out to be like just this huge mess. It turned into like just like this racist forum where people were just decreeing all sorts of stuff, disco and everything else. And
It was the 1981 version of Parlor. Just like a real life version.
yes. Anyway, so getting back to Temple basketball, Temple
We haven't
football.
been on Temple yet.
Yes. Got a lot of stuff to go over with you guys this week, in addition to our fake walk-up music. Temple's basketball team, the Owls, have now improved to 4-4 after Tuesday's win over Tulsa. Got a little bit of football to talk about as well. Sam Neumann was able to catch up with Kobe Wilson, one of the team's promising young defensive players and linebackers. We know how much they have to replace on that side of the ball. Got some mailbag questions for you as well. Let's talk about this Temple basketball team again. They improved to 4-4, continuing to look better. Obviously, I guess they've played 2 games since we last talked to you guys. Of course, they I don't know, I guess about what we expected when they lost to Houston. Houston very much looked like the 8th ranked team in the country, if not better. We can see the difference between the two programs. And then again, Temple bounced back yesterday in a 76-67 win. Khalif Battle goes for career highs of 22 points and 11 rebounds. So we're seeing some promising signs there. Obviously, the team and the program aren't where Aaron McKee wants them to be yet. If they were, they'd be 7-1 and nationally ranked or something like that. But Sam Cohen, I'll kick it over to you first. What did you see yesterday? Again, obviously some good stuff from Khalif Battle. There were some pluses and minuses with foul trouble. They led by as many as 22 at one point. So obviously Tulsa made things a little hairy at the end, but Temple held on. What are your general impressions from the game?
Well, quick point before we get into yesterday or whatever day's game. Their only losses are SMU and Houston on multiple occasions. And if you think about it, Houston's one of the best teams in the nation, and SMU is one of the best teams in the conferences. So they're playing they're giving fights and they're playing well and they're getting wins against middle of the pack teams in the conference, which should say something in and of itself. In terms of the other day's game against Tulsa, as you mentioned, Khalif Battle was really the spark plug for them. There was a lot of offensive distribution beyond that. 9 guys played, 8 scored. Erasmus Parks was the only one that didn't score. Jeremiah Williams didn't have the scoring, wasn't scoring at the level that he generally does, but he was sharing the ball really well. He's kind of, I don't want to say that he's really taken his game to a new level because he's doing a lot of the same stuff he was doing from the beginning of the season. That's been impressive is he's looked so poised running the offense and had a lot of confidence in terms of setting things up, finding guys, working through dribble handoffs, working through screen and rolls and finding guys to make plays. Khalif Battle, although he did hit a lot of really nice shots, make a lot of really nice plays, his decision-making wasn't always exactly there. He did turn the ball over 5 times. He said post-game that he didn't exactly think he had a great game. He came into the presser, and I think everyone was ready to ask him, you just had a career day, your career high in points, your career high in rebounds, and your first career double-double. How does that feel? And his response was essentially, I don't think I played that well. And the interesting part was him talking about he's learned a lot from Aaron McKee and the Temple staff. He tweeted post game the staff doesn't get enough credit for how much they do for their guys and how much they've helped their guys. So Khalif Battle was definitely the big point. And I guess the thing I'll end on, and then I'll kick it over to you guys, is so Jake Forrester has been on the Americans weekly honor roll 2 weeks straight. He's gotten Big 5 honors 2 weeks straight. And despite a slow start to the season, despite foul trouble a lot early in the season, he found himself back in that scenario along with Damian Dunn, both getting in pretty bad foul trouble, both fouling out by the end of the game against Tulsa, which is a lot of the reason that Tulsa was able to chip away at the lead, able to crawl back because their 7-footer going one-on-one with JP Mormon in the post isn't a good matchup for Temple, who generally likes to play small ball and has some success with it. But they're against certain matchups, they're going to need a guy like Jake Forrester in the interior. They're going to need size. They're going to need an interior presence. Jake Forrester, although having a solid game at the offensive end of the floor, got a couple buckets early, did well on the glass. I don't have the number off the top of my head, but having him out of the game and having Damian Dunn out of the game, 2 starters in crunch time, as Tulsa's chipping away, it was a 7-point game at one point. It hurt them, but this young crew was still able to secure the win.
Yeah, just going off of that, I mean, with the foul trouble you're talking about, that was, Sam, I don't know about you, but Aaron seemed like kind of visibly frustrated by, being every time he's asked about Jake's foul trouble. He seemed like he pretty much said, you guys ask me about this every time we hop on a Zoom session. He's aware of it, but he needs to put it into action. So they keep telling him to just keep his hands up, and it just seems like he's not able to. So that I mean, considering the depth that Temple has behind him, or lack thereof, I mean, Erasmus Parks has really done nothing for them this year, and I don't know if he's still being hindered by a shoulder injury or what, but I mean, it shows it in his minutes. And as you mentioned, I mean, he was the only player who didn't score yesterday. And then Nick Jourdain is kind of seen after he played a little bit in the first couple of games, has not really had an existent role. So I think that's something that's going to figure out. And Tulsa kind of showed how you can expose a Temple team, because if you get them in foul trouble, you can kind of beat them down low. So that's definitely something that they're going to have to work on going forward for sure.
That quote that you guys are referring to with Jake, and it comes to his foul trouble, the part of the quote, second part of the quote here from Aaron from yesterday was, he got us off to a good start and we told him, hey, you've got to find a way to keep yourself in the game. And we're telling him not to foul, just get your hands up. But for some reason, he can't control it. He's still a work in progress when it comes to that, along with Damian Dunn. Hopefully these guys watch film of this game and just learn from it. I mean, he was, if anything, again, he only ended up playing 16 minutes. Now, he was very efficient in those 16 minutes, 5 of 6 from the field, 6 boards, no assists, 2 turnovers, did get 10 points. On the flip side of it, I mean, it sounds generic, but just for them to get a win against Tulsa was big. Now, I know that Tulsa has owned them more down there. Temple has never beaten Tulsa down there in Oklahoma. But, I mean, again, for a team that's been on again, off again, literally in terms of how often they can play, beating a Tulsa team that's owned you and a program that has really owned you was, I think, a significant step forward for them. I mean, what Aaron said in terms of how they beat their zone yesterday wasn't anything fancy. He said, we just want to go inside out. And again, they were able to do that when Jake was on the floor. Obviously, they were able to break down their zone by knocking down some shots, and Trey Perry bounced back. And I know that Brendan Barry isn't scoring at the clip that everybody wants him to. And I think it's just as simple as you can see how much teams are doing to try to deny him the ball. But what does it give them that they didn't have last year? It's allowing them to space the floor better. When somebody constantly has to chase him around and constantly has to pay attention to him, he's freeing up somebody else. So I'm continuing to see signs of progress. Yes, they could have been a lot less sloppy in how they finished out the game. But as Aaron said, when you have Jeremiah Williams on the floor, Khalif Battle's handling the ball actually a fair amount. I think Chris Clark or Jimmy, one of them might have said back in the spring when we talked to them that the ball handling was one of the things he'd have to work on. I'm sure he does, but he is bringing the ball up the floor a lot. He's driving a lot. I wasn't entirely surprised that they were a little sloppy in finishing out the game, but again, Jeremiah Williams, 8 assists yesterday, still had a great game. Again, didn't put up a lot in terms of points, 6 points, but he played 36 minutes, 8 assists, 2 turnovers, played another solid game. So
great defense too.
Yeah.
Sam had pointed out that his defensive effort in that game should not go unnoticed. And it's not easy covering, a team starting point guard, taking on a tough defensive assignment and finding ways to score the ball at the offensive end of the floor. Elijah Joyner, who I had tweeted out during the game that he went to Curie, which is one of Simeon's rival high schools, but he's a couple years older. So when Jeremiah only playing his senior year at Simeon, their times did not overlap. But he's from the Chicago area, playing the Chicago Public League, and he only scored 2 points in the first half. And if I'm not mistaken, Jeremiah was the one covering him for a majority of the game. He had 10 or 12 in the second half, but Jeremiah really limited his production offensively. So as Sam had mentioned it earlier and during the game, that definitely shouldn't go unnoticed.
I mean, it's something they can hang their hat on, though, even when there have been, maybe some miscues and struggles. Just the way that their defense is played. I mean, I know I might butcher his last name, but they shut down Tulsa's leading scorer for the majority of the game. Granted, they'd open up opportunities for other players, and that's kind of something that has been Temple's biggest bugaboos. When they shut down one, another one goes off. But that I was impressed with the way that they were able to keep him in check.
All right, so just a few minutes ago, we did mention, I think Sam mentioned that Khalif Battle talked about how, although he played well, he wasn't satisfied. He mentioned that the turnovers that he had in the game, 5 turnovers, he wasn't satisfied with that. Watched some film. Here is that clip from Khalif Battle talking to reporters over Zoom after yesterday's game, after yesterday's win over Tulsa.
I mean, my job to come off the bench, play hard, and, just help my teammates win. So whatever I could do. I mean, I really don't think I had the best game today. I still had 5 turnovers at the end of the day. So, I got to keep on working on just being in control with the ball. And we work on these situations in practice, so there's really no excuse for what I did at the end of the game.
All right, so there again, you hear about a player that is far from satisfied with what he's doing. But again, Temple's really starting to see what they had hoped for and what they had bargained for with Khalif Battle. Again, a former Trenton Catholic star, played 1 season last year at Butler, immediately eligible now. So again, his numbers from yesterday, 32 minutes, 6 of 10 from the field, 3 of 6 from 3-point range, 7 of 8 from the line, 11 boards. Again, that was a career high. Both totals yesterday, points and rebounds were career highs. 3 assists, the 5 turnovers he wasn't happy with. But again, another guy whose progress is moving things along and kind of changing the temperature of the room for this Temple program now. Guys, does the starting lineup change in the future, you think? Or do you think Aaron just keeps rolling with the same starting 5 here?
I think, well, someone had asked Aaron McKee post-game, what his thoughts were. And he's been pretty reluctant to say he's thought much of anything about it. I think it's a very real possibility that with the inconsistent play of guys like Dre, Jake, and JP with their ability to stay on the floor. Like, they've all played really well in spurts. They've all had they've all had their good games. They've all shined. Jake Forster mainly of late. Dre Perry hasn't exactly been able to get his 3-point shot going, but he's found other ways to impact the game. JP, we've talked about, as a really high basketball IQ, and he's either been able to impact the game at the defensive end, on the glass, or get his shot going. So I think you're looking at a scenario where they pull one of them. If I were to guess, I would say probably Dre, leave JP and Jake in the front court and put in Khalif Battle. Kyle's shaking his head no.
I'm going to Stephen A. Smith this. If you think there's any chance that Aaron McKee is going to put his 4th-year senior starter on the bench for Khalif Battle, you're out of your mind. There's no chance.
Do you think it's Damian Dunn?
No, I don't think it happens. I think the cliche.
This is a hypothetical. I think that's the way it fits. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I agree with you. I think that's a good point. They're not going to pull, the senior, 5th year, whatever. But this is just a hypothetical if it happens.
Yeah, I think it's an issue if it was hard to get Khalif Battle minutes. Like, if it was like, okay, he's coming off the bench, he's only playing 18 minutes a game, and how are you going to find a way for this to happen? Then that's one thing. He's coming off the bench, played 32 against Tulsa, 33 against Houston, 19 against Tulane, but that was his first game back. I think it's the old Philadelphia cliche of it doesn't matter who starts, it matters who finishes. They're finding plenty of opportunities. He's getting a crap ton of usage when he's actually on the court. I think his role right now is fine. I think the only way it happens, I think if anything, it's more likely that a Damian Dunn or somebody comes off, but I don't see that happening either. I think it's Khalif Battle. See if you can play your way to 6th man of the year.
Let me pose
your coach, Aaron McKee.
I agree with you, Kyle. Let me pose this question though to you. Like, what happens on a day where Damian Dunn really does have it going and he doesn't get into foul trouble? Because I think we can attribute a lot of Khalif's minutes. Obviously, he's playing well. They're going to stick with him, but I think Damian Dunn playing 18 minutes and getting into foul trouble does clear out some room for Khalif Battle. So what do you do on a day? Obviously, it's a plus if Damian Dunn is not in foul trouble and he's playing well. Who does he take minutes from? Is he taking them from Dre, or you just keep rolling him into the game?
Damian Dunn had 1 foul and played 28 minutes against Houston. Like, you already had that scenario happen where Dunn doesn't get into foul trouble and Battle still found a way to play 32 minutes or 33 minutes. I think they're not playing conventional 2 guards, one forward, 2 power bigs. There's 4 guards out there a lot. Brendan Barry and Khalif Battle are going to play a lot of minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Also, not to mention, question in the front court is Jake. I mean, Jake Forster has been in foul trouble in pretty much every game besides the 2 that he had. The 2 that he put up 15 points. So that also is another reason why they'll probably play small ball and you'll see 3 guards in the lineup and they go from there. I think, the Dunphy cliche. And at the same time, I think the starting lineup is always overrated by fans. I think at the end of the game, if Dre Perry starts and only plays like 25 minutes and Khalif plays 32, like that's probably what they're going for. And Dre only played not that he, played well versus Houston, but he only played 10 minutes and Khalif played 32. So you're going to, this Temple team, they're young. They have inconsistencies. It seems like, there's games where not everybody is going to be on. So you just kind of have to roll with that.
Can I spin zone this question?
Sure.
Temple plays Tulane on Sunday at noon, 1 o'clock. I think noon. Doesn't matter.
Noon, right?
Say Temple's up for 2 minutes and change left. Who's on the floor?
And nobody's
in foul trouble. This is a complete hypothetical that everybody has the exact same
scenario.
Amount of
They're
points.
up 4. Is that what you said?
Up 4, 2 minutes and change left. Hypothetically, everyone has the exact same number of points. Everyone has played the exact same number of minutes, and no one's in foul trouble.
Are you asking between Battle and Dunn, or are you asking like the full 5?
Give me 5. Who do you want on the floor?
Dunn, Battle, Barry. And then I'll go Perry and Moorman. I don't know if I want Jake Forster on the floor right there. Just because I think it comes down to maybe Jeremiah instead of Barry, but I think it just comes down to foul a lot. Free throws a lot up 4 that you want them on there. Which we can talk about Damian Dunn free throws as much as you want. We were talking about that a little bit in the group chat about how he's a volume free throw shooter, not necessarily a super accurate one at this point, but. Yeah, I think Battle's on the floor in those situations. I think he's shown that he struggled with free throws early on, but then when it actually matters in games, his free throw percentage goes up a lot. So That would be my 5.
Yeah, for me, go ahead, John.
No, you got Tim.
All right. So I was going to say, I mean, I would pretty much go with Battle, Dunn, Jeremiah, one of Mormon and Perry, and maybe both of them. But I think it all depends really, like, is Tulane like playing big? Because if they are, you can't really have JP and Dre on the floor because we saw what happened against Tulsa. So say if Tulane's playing big, yeah, I think you're going to have Forrester out on the floor just because, and probably Dre goes to the bench. But if they're playing where Temple can get away with the small ball, I think you'll have Perry, Mormon, Jeremiah, Dunn, and Khalif.
I think I would have Damian Dunn, Khalif Battle, Brendan Barry, Jeremiah Williams, and Dre Perry out there. Again, I think Sam makes a good point. Yeah, if Tulane's playing a little bit bigger, defensively, you might have a better approach there. But yeah, I'd trust. I mean, you have Brendan Barry out there. I don't think Brendan Barry's been, I think people have, unfairly stereotyped him, said, okay, he's an Ivy League guard. How quick is he going to be defensively? I really don't think he's been that much of a defensive liability. I don't think you've seen too many occasions where like he just got completely roasted or was super slow to rotate on defense, and you want him out there because he's a good foul shooter. Yeah, I mean, probably Jeremiah. Yeah, Jeremiah, Dre Perry, Brendan Barry, Khalif Battle, and Damian Dunn would be the 5 that I would have out on the floor.
I like that list. Do you want me to go? I would take Jeremiah, Damian Dunn, Khalif Battle, Jake Forrester, either JP or Dre, and I'm running quick subs with Brendan Barry and either Damian Dunn or Khalif Battle. I'm running quick subs.
Sam,
in a late game scenario. I'll put one in for defense. I'll put, whoever, if someone makes a mistake, you're getting yanked, and I'm putting someone else in, kind of thing.
General question for you guys, and fans probably hate this because they want the team to be undefeated at this point, which I understand. But is this team or this program, considering the roster overhaul, considering where they are, you think they're ahead of schedule, right on schedule, or behind schedule?
I think they're kind of on schedule. I think it's just more obvious now on January 27th as opposed to November 1st that they are on the right path in my mind. Mm-hmm. I think when Temple wasn't playing and you hadn't played in 8-9 months and you hadn't seen anything, it was kind of hard to envision like where are they going with this. And I think you've seen that they've hit on Damian Dunn, they've hit on Jeremiah Williams, they've self-scouted well in Khalif Battle, they've scouted well in Brendan Barry. I think I'm more confident in the blueprint at this point than I was 9 months ago, but I'll say they're about right on schedule.
I would agree that
the question is, what's your schedule? My schedule says this is year 2. If they finish 11-10, that's a good year for year 2. You're above 500. You're on the right path. You build from there. I think if someone says no, year 2 they should be going to the NCAA tournament, then their schedule might be a little off.
Mm-hmm. I would agree that they're on schedule, but I think I would make there's an argument to be made that to say they're behind schedule would to say that Ty Strickland is not where we thought he would be at this point in the season, and we haven't seen any of Jaleel White because he was injured. I think if you add those two, if Ty was playing right now the way we thought he would play, maybe Jeremiah isn't exactly at the level he's at right now just because he wouldn't have had the same amount of reps. But let's say hypothetically that Ty is where we thought he might have been, Jaleel was healthy, then it comes down to a numbers game, as Aaron McKee likes to say, about who's getting what kind of minutes. I think that's your on schedule, and I think they're slightly. I think Jaleel makes them a lot better of a team. I think what Ty could have brought, I think, makes them a lot better of a team. He's clearly regressed in his first couple games and hasn't seen the floor in weeks. But I would agree with Kyle that if you're around 500, slightly above, I think you're right where you want to be in Aaron McKee's second year and in the first year with such a significant roster overhaul.
Yeah, I think the other part is if this was year 5 and you were saying no, they have this roster, it's year 5 and see what they can do, then you're probably also seeing them force Sage Tolbert out there into minutes. I think they're slow burning this. Sage would have been a guy that you said, okay, well now Jake can play more aggressive because they have another big that can actually fill those spots. But I think it's a stew, baby. I think you're not just throwing this in the oven. I think you're crock potting it and you're slowly you're letting it cook.
I was getting hungry.
You throw a chicken leg in there. You got yourself a stew, baby.
Yeah, I think that right now that they're probably right about schedule. I think Sam makes a good point about Ty Strickland, but I think at the same time that there was bound with the level of guards that they have on this team, there was bound for somebody to be buried on the depth chart. Unfortunately, it's Ty, but I think you have to take that with the fact that Jeremiah Williams looks like everything that they probably wanted and more. And I think the way that some of these players have developed before our eyes, like in the first, what have they played, 8 games, is pretty impressive just to see, Damian Dunn and Jeremiah Williams, the way that they played. I mean, even Khalif Battle, somebody who hasn't, he is was a former 4-star recruit, played a little bit at Butler, but he barely even practiced, and then he didn't practice at all for 2 months and thrown
Quincy
in the lineup.
too.
What'd you say?
Quincy too.
Yeah. And Quincy too. And, obviously you probably would, Nick Jordan, this is probably like a red shirt year for him, not like a red shirt, but you know what I mean? Like as the terms of, we in a non-COVID year, Nick Jordan would probably be redshirting this year. And he kind of, when he talked to Sam, he would be like, yeah, I'm still like a work in progress. And he clearly is, but I think he's shown, some glimpses of, okay, this kid definitely belongs at this level. And, obviously you would like to have seen Jaleel White and Sage Tolbert, but both of those things are kind of out of their hands. So when you're talking about on what they are capable of and on schedule, I would say that, they're right on schedule, just because a lot of the 3 things that you want to put out there, maybe Ty, Sage, and Jaleel, they're out of their hands. And for Ty, yeah, he's regressed, but do we really know the whole story with, maybe how much the shoulder is affecting him? You just don't know, because obviously he missed practice too, and they brought him back, and maybe he's not, we just don't know. Maybe he's not the same player.
I mean, I'm sure fans would say that I'm bright siding this, but to be 4-4, having played Houston twice and having played SMU twice already, I don't think they're in such a bad spot. I think it would be really, really interesting if Jaleel White was healthy and Sage Tolbert was healthy. I mean, the easier answer there is if Sage Tolbert's healthy, I think they're in a really good spot. And I think Erasmus Parks is virtually not playing at all, or playing just sparingly if Sage Tolbert's in the mix. If Jaleel White had been healthy, didn't re-tear his meniscus cartilage in his left knee, and was playing as well as Jimmy Faraday and Chris Clark said he was, pushing to start, then I think the guard lineup becomes even more interesting. But again, it's a pleasant problem to have. And although Quincy Adams-McCoy hasn't been playing a ton, he at least has been getting in earlier, hasn't really been buried on the bench. You can see that he's knocked down a few shots. And if he gets to where he needs to be defensively, I mean, there's great length there. I mean, they really are. I agree with Kyle. I know it's been one of their marketing slogans, because Aaron McKee's nickname is Blue, but there is a blueprint there. Like you can see, they have a couple of conference and national models. They want to be like Houston. They want to be long and athletic and be a pain in terms of, getting those extra rebounds and keeping possessions alive. Ultimately, they'd like to be like Florida State, but you can see, with the exception of Brendan Barry, I think, Hyseer Miller coming in is about 6'1", so he's not a super long guy. But other than that, I think the pieces are there. It's just developing them, keeping them on the roster. But other than that, I mean, 4-4. I mean, they're playing a Tulane team this weekend that Tulane's going to really be tested tonight against Houston. They play Houston tonight. I guess we're recording this on a Thursday. Houston's ranked 6 now. Tulane is playing them, and then they'll play Temple on Sunday. Tulane only has 1 conference win. They've kind of beefed up the wins that they have against a pretty soft non-conference schedule. They're 6-4 on a 2-game losing streak right now. So that's a game that I would expect Temple to win, or certainly be competitive in. So I don't know. I think the roster is discernibly better than it was last year.
I would agree. This is kind of completely random, but a couple years ago, I was on a podcast, on a Houston Cougars podcast called the Scott and Hallman podcast, which I guess is the intersection of where their athletic department is. And because Temple played a noon Tuesday game, you had a bunch of random people watching it, or 1:00 Tuesday game, whatever it was. And they said, Temple might be a team worth buying stock in long-term. Dunn and Williams clearly have their flaws, but you don't have to squint too hard to see them developing into good pain-in-the-ass guards, which I would agree with. Khalif Battle is a game changer, big guard who can knock down shots, blah, blah, blah. I really thought Temple would be a bottom 2 AAC team, and they've far outpaced that. I would agree with that entire sentiment. I think you project Damian Dunn and Jeremiah Williams are exciting as they are. Jeremiah Williams just finished top 10 on SportsCenter top 10 with number 4 to steal his layup. Imagine him in 3 years when he's 21, 22 years old. He's going to be that type of guard that just gives people pain. Like he causes them trouble. And now you just hope that there's 4 or 5 more of those on the roster that they can just keep rolling out there.
All right, so Sam Cohn did another film session breakdown, this one with Khalif Battle, who we've been talking about a lot on this podcast for good reason. Sam, this is a subscriber story. So again, if you guys have subscribed to owlscoop.com, you can get the full story and the film session breakdown there. Sam, why don't you give people a little taste of what they can expect when they read that?
Just to clarify, it is on Khalif Battle. I wish it was with Khalif Battle. I'd love to sit down and break down film with him one time, but that can't happen. No, that's okay. So
you don't know what's going to change between now and tomorrow morning when the pod comes out. Maybe you will do a film session.
Maybe I'll get a chance to do it with him. Yeah. But yes, there is one thing that I want to tease about that's in the film breakdown, and that's and I think it speaks to a larger conversation that we've had, and both in our group chat and kind of the narrative around Temple basketball, and that's that Brendan Berry showed he can be a really, really good shooter for the first 4 or 5 games. And then it became quickly apparent that if other guys aren't doing anything, that other opposing teams are just going to key in on him and completely take him out of the game. And Damian Dunn and Jeremiah Williams, both guys, I think we can all agree are, I would say, trustworthy 3-point shooters, but not lights out 3-point shooters. Not a guy that's going to draw that much attention from the perimeter. Damian Dunn is time and again. There was one play in the Tulsa game where he caught the ball at the free throw line, and instead of pulling from 12 feet, he drove into contact instead of taking the open shot. And there have been moments on the perimeter where he's had the shot, he hasn't taken it. Jeremiah Williams doesn't seem, he's not aggressive. He's not aggressive with the green light, but he's knocked down a couple 3-pointers. My point is that neither of those guys are shooters like Brendan Berry is. The addition of Khalif Battle into this lineup changes things a lot in that sense. And I think that's something we've talked about, that like if they have other guys that can score, other guys that can make plays, that opens the floor up so much more. So there was one play, 2 minutes left in the first half. I have it up here on my screen. With 2 minutes left in the first half, Temple's up 19. It's Khalif Battle, Jeremiah Williams, Brendan Berry, Dre Perry, and JP Mormon on the floor together. Jeremiah Williams starts the half-court set with a dribble handoff to Dre Perry, who then swings it over to Khalif Battle. Tulsa's in a 1-2-2 zone defense. So Khalif Battle catches the ball like top of the key, slightly off to the right, and Brendan Berry's in his strong side corner. JP Mormon comes up and sets a screen on the top guy of the zone. And when Khalif Battle takes one step to the right on that screen, his defender has to see him. The other defender on the wing, his momentum comes towards Khalif Battle. He draws in that second defender, and then the defender on the bottom block has to account for JP Mormon rolling to the corner. With that kind of attention that Khalif Battle can draw 2 steps off the line, leaves Brendan Berry wide open in the corner, and that's when he finds Brendan Berry, who knocks down the wide open 3. So that the point about Khalif Battle, yes, he scored 22 points. Yes, he brought down 11 rebounds. Yes, he had a couple turnovers. But I think that what he does in the long run, and kind of looking at it from a broader scope, is that he can be that guy that draws that attention with the ball in his hands. John had mentioned earlier that he had the ball in his hands, I think, a lot more lately than any of us really expected. So him having the ball in his hands, him being able to get that action at the top of the key, beyond the 3-point line, and draw that kind of attention, opens up the floor for someone like Brendan Berry. And say that bottom guy does go out and see Brendan Berry, that either leads to he finds Brendan Berry in the corner, and who then kicks it into JP Mormon rolling to the hoop, who's wide open, or he finds JP Mormon rolling to the hoop. So there's a lot more options with Khalif Battle is what I'm trying to get at when he draws that kind of attention. At this point in the game, he already had 10 points. He already established himself as someone who can score the basketball. He already had both his and ones. He already knocked down a 3. So he had shown that like he can be that guy who can make plays for this Temple team. I think that was one of the more interesting things I took away from going back and watching Khalif's film from this game.
I completely agree. And I think what you see in the future is, you just talked about how defenses start keying in on him after he has that early success, and they start to realize this. Well, now he's already had that success. Now when Tulane is scouting Temple again, and when UCF is scouting Temple again, that's already on film. They know they have to key in on him to begin with, freeing up more opportunities for Berry. So I think it's something that you see continue to give. But yeah, I think that was a good film breakdown that you only get on owlscoop.com.
What I see in the future is Sam Cohn is a graduate assistant coach on Aaron McKee's staff.
Nope, because he just froze again.
Sam has been having Zoom issues on this podcast, but that was one hell of a breakdown. All right. So speaking of subscriber content, moving over to football, Sam Neumann, Carolina Sam, talked to Kobe Wilson, one of Temple's best young defensive players. I guess we'd still consider him a freshman, right? Considering that this was a pretty much an eligibility-free season. So Sam talked to Kobe Wilson, got some interesting stuff. Again, it's a subscriber piece. If you are subscribed to owlscoop.com, you can check it out. It's up on the website now. Sam, you want to give listeners a little bit of what they can expect in that story?
Yeah. So, I mean, Kobe Wilson is one of those guys. I mean, to be quite honest, it's kind of ironic because he was a last second, he flipped to Temple, got it. Georgia kind of creeped in at the last minute, tried to get him to stay home. He flipped from Memphis, and now this kid is completely in. Like, he's absolutely all in. It looks like we lost Sam again. But no, he was pretty candid. He felt like that a lot of the guys in the locker room last year, and probably most of them that left, weren't completely bought in. And I guess that's what you kind of saw when players left. They weren't really surprised. I mean, he mentioned that a couple of guys to me, I don't have this in the article, but he mentioned that, when Isaiah Graham Mobley and Chris Banks decided to transfer, like those were kind of surprised to the team, but others were not. I guess there was kind of tea leaves there. And maybe there's stuff in the locker room that kind of pointed to that maybe the guys weren't bought in 100%, but the coaching staff has kind of taken to that since being back. And what they do is Kerry has made players get wristbands that they go in and sign a covenant that, they're completely all in, and then they have to wear the wristband to prove that, to prove themselves that they're 100% in, which I thought was a really neat anecdote. Interesting that's what Kerry and his staff has started to do. And Kobe Wilson was one of the first one. He said he was one of the first people to sign that covenant, one of the first people to get that wristband. And the story talks about how Rod Kerry is kind of like a father figure to him. Coach Jeff Knowles, the defense coordinator, is kind of like an older brother, but also a fatherly figure. So he seems like he's got a great relationship with the coaching staff, and he's going to be immersed into the middle of the field for them for a while. He didn't go into too much specifics of where he's going to play on the field, but he played Bubo, not a position he was recruited to play here, and did pretty well. He can play. That Sam will back. He can pretty much do anything in the middle of the field for them. So I mean, this is the type of when there's conversations about Rod Kerry's and his staff ability to recruit, Kobe Wilson is the guy that you look at, somebody who's a 3-star, a lot of Power 5 offers, Memphis included too. And this is a kid who wants to be here. He's completely in. So I think that for Temple, you kind of have to take your losses like they did. I mean, do what they had to do in the portal. And but when you have somebody like Kobe Wilson, who is practically, I mean, he's considered a freshman. It's going to be a second year, but he has 5 collegiate games under his belt, and he's ready to step up, and he's ready to lead his teammates. So I think as they kind of go into the next direction with this program, I think having Kobe Wilson as one of the face of it, they could do a lot worse.
All right. So again, check out Sam's story when you get a chance. This will be our last podcast before the second National Signing Day, which will be next week. We've got some mailbag questions about this as well. One pertaining to Trad Betty, but we expecting any movement between this week and next week? I mean, obviously there's going to be, they're down a quarterback now. Trad Betty has decided to retire. As we understand, it is tied to the injury that he sustained against SMU, which was believed to be a concussion. So he's stepping away from football. What do we think? Are you guys expecting to see anything shake loose between now and next week when it comes to recruiting?
Yeah, so I think it's interesting. Excuse me. I think one thing that's kind of important to call out to the casual fan or casual recruiting fan is just because a guy like Trad Betty left and now there's an open scholarship there, it doesn't mean that all of a sudden Temple can take one more person than before. There's still rules where, programs can only take maximum 25 scholarship guys a calendar year. Yes, there's ways around that where, hey, you only took 22 the year before, you can count 3 of those early enrollees towards 2020 and blah, blah, but there is a limit. So as of right now, I mean, Temple has via transfers and via high school kids, they probably have like 5 or 6 spots to kind of work with in this class. I think Sam Neumann kind of just alluded to the fact that in order to kind of weather that storm of the exodus of guys that might not have been all the way bought in, that they're going to utilize the transfer portal more than they would in other years. And that makes next Wednesday less significant than a conventional signing day. I think you'll definitely still see, hey, they're going to announce, even though they've already announced it, Zach Gill and Iverson Clement and Lancine Toure. I still think they're going to try to add in a starting cornerback. Some of the names you're kind of hearing up there are like Cameron Ruiz, who was a cornerback from Northwestern, started a bit, even started a couple games this year and kind of got benched as he went. He's starting to get the Temple follow process treatment, is getting it back. You're seeing Adam Sparks. It's a very similar story. Started as a freshman, sophomore cornerback in Missouri, kind of dwindled as went down. I think you're going to see them try to find a plug-and-play cornerback. And other than that, I mean, I don't know if you hold some of these spots for later on in the process, because conventionally and in pre-COVID years and free transfer waivers, if that still passes years, this is when you kind of find when the exodus happens. It's usually April, May after spring ball, and somebody had 15 practices and they didn't carve out the role they wanted. So now they're looking for greener pastures. So I think they are going to want to keep some of those open for later on, even with this staff. I mean, Aaron Monroe didn't get added until May, June, July, the year that he played. Joseph Hooper was a May, June, July guys, these summer guys. So I think you'll see something. I think there might still be a high school name out there. I know the guys that we still have listed committed as Antonio Barber and Jalen Martin. I don't think it's likely at all that Jalen Martin ends up signing with Temple. If you're keen on social media, he's removed every reference to Temple on his social media. So that's usually reading the tea leaves. And I think it's still up in the air with Antonio Barber. So I think there's the possibility for up to 5 guys next Wednesday, in addition to Iverson Clement, Zach Gill, and Lancine Toure. But I think it's also possible that we have no idea that these guys don't come in until later on.
Yeah, and then Kyle, you mentioned, I remember Kyle mentioned Jaquan Amos who's a local guy, or Jaquan Armos. I butchered his name there. I think he's a local kid, but it looks like he might be on for bigger things, as he's got some Power 5 offers, so that might be a different case. But, when you look at the positions, and obviously, Kobe Wilson kind of alluded this too, there might be some guys who when he was talking with me, that there might still be some guys that leave too. So that can also play in the factor in why Temple might want to leave some spots open, just because they don't know what positions they're going to have to eventually fill too. I don't know if you guys believe this, but I feel like quarterback would still definitely be in play. It's just a matter of, what guy are they going to be able to take, because is somebody going to want to come in and not necessarily might be the third or fourth option in the quarterback room. And kicker is definitely a big thing as well. And like Kyle said, that's probably, honestly, I could see them waiting for kicker until later on, just because they're going to maybe take on somebody from an FCS school, maybe somebody who plays in the spring, who knows at this point. I would be surprised if we see them plug all those holes on next week. I think maybe we'll see a couple of names, but in addition to Ray, Gill, and Clement, but I don't think it's going to be anything too crazy.
Yeah, I think you raise a good point about the quarterback position. I think we have a mailbag question about that later. Is what they decide to do with that position is probably going to be pretty telling in itself. If you bring in a guy that, even though you brought in Dwan Mathis, if you bring in a 5th-year guy who is looking to get film, then that tells you that either you don't think Mathis is ready right away, or you just I'll be curious to see if they use that spot for somebody like that, because right now Real Mitchell is your most experienced returning quarterback, and he's a redshirt sophomore. Everybody else at the scholarship table is a freshman or a redshirt freshman going into next year. So like you said, are you going to be able to bring in a redshirt junior or a redshirt senior to kind of bring a veteran presence into that room? Like, if you're the kid, if you're the quarterback, are you going to want that? I don't know. That'll be interesting. Reese Udinsky, the VMI quarterback, committed to Maryland. And even so, that's going to be, I think, the most telling. Like, if they bring in and just say, hey, we brought in a transfer from Illinois who's a redshirt freshman that we like, then okay, then that probably boosts your confidence a little bit in Mathis, but also it might tell you that the staff is here for the long haul.
Yeah, and the mailbag question that we're essentially just answering here now is from Al Worldwide from the message board. And the question there was, with Trad announcing he's stepping away from football, do you think Temple will target another QB in the transfer portal? And yeah, I think those are all viable options there. Again, Justin Lynch. Why do I always get Justin Lynch, right? Jordan Lynch's brother. Justin Lynch coming in. We've mentioned this several times before. He's going to be a 17-year-old freshman when he comes in. I think the staff would definitely want to redshirt him. And if Dwan Mathis is what you expect him to be, then the long-term battle there is, how good is Dwan Mathis versus Justin Lynch. But yeah, I mean, if they do bring in somebody younger, then I think that makes things really interesting. We'll see what happens with Real Mitchell. Matt Duncan fits into the mix there. He's back on the roster. So I don't know.
Mariano Valenti too.
Yeah, I think that's going to be something really interesting. Hopefully Rod Carey will have media access next week, and hopefully we'll get a chance to touch base with him, ask him some of these questions and get answers to these questions. But yeah, if you see another name pop up there, I don't know what's out there in terms of, like a 5th-year guy, if you're just recruiting for depth at this point, or does Rod Carey essentially say, you know what, we'll keep Real Mitchell at quarterback. We like what we've seen from Matt Duncan. Lynch will be in the mix. Kamal Gray as a preferred walk-on is in the mix, and we're good at quarterback, and we need to pick up another cornerback. We'll see what happens there. But again, as Kyle also cautioned too, just with somebody leaving, that doesn't mean that automatically another spot pops up there. Last mailbag question we have here. This is a basketball one. This is from TU1834 is the screen name. For the Scoop staff, is Ty Strickland hurt, or is him not playing a coaching decision? We know the answer to that one, right? As far as we know, it's been a coaching decision. Now, well, I guess we shouldn't answer it that easily because, of course, Ty Strickland is coming off of shoulder surgery in the offseason, but he has played. I think he's kind of just correct me if I'm wrong, guys. I think he's kind of just the odd man out at this point. It's not to say that he couldn't play, that there couldn't be matchups or situations that present themselves in the future where he comes in and doesn't play a few minutes, but it has been crowded there. And as far as we know, I don't think he's re-aggravated anything. I think it has been a coaching decision, right?
Yeah, I would agree that it's probably a coaching decision. And there could be some lingering issue, as you mentioned, from his shoulder surgery a couple months ago. But as far as we know, again, as you mentioned, that he's at the point where he's sort of getting squeezed out just because it's a numbers game in terms of getting meaningful minutes in these games. And although he did show flashes of a good hand on the ball, a good decision maker, a good defender, he just hasn't been able to put the ball in the basket. I think that's probably the most important thing, is if he can't do that, then Aaron McKee and the rest of his staff are going to look to someone else that can.
I think I mentioned earlier in the pod, we just don't know what the shoulder, it could be that we would be wrong to speculate whether it is. I think right now it's probably a coaching decision, like Sam mentioned, and it's just hard to get him minutes especially with Khalif Battle back. I think if Khalif was still out, you'd probably see Ty Strickland out there, and if you didn't see Ty Strickland out there, that might be some tea leaves to read upon. But I think it has a lot to do with the addition of Khalif Battle and the way that Jeremiah Williams, Brennan Barry, and Damien Dunn have been playing.
All right, well, that'll do it for this week. Thanks for listening once again. We'll be back next week with more basketball news, more football recruiting news, and more answers to your mailbag questions. So again, thanks so much for tuning in, and we will talk to you soon.